Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. The Manga Man here, and today we're talking about Black Clover. It's titled 292, but really is 291 and 292. Now, things to consider with this, realistically speaking, is that it feels like it's been ages since I've spoken about Black Clover. So this is 2 chapter review, and also bear in mind next week there won't be a chapter, from what I understand, possibly a break due to health conditions. So ultimately, well wishes, and hopefully you get well soon. Without further ado, let's get into these chapter reviews. So, before we start the chapter of 291 review, as always, all links will be in the description below, including timestamps. So if you do want to skip this section, you're more than welcome to do so. However, I would appreciate if you watched the whole thing, as it would really help me in my small channel, get through these algorithms. That being said, chapter 291. Now, 291 for me, really kind of emphasizes a few different things. The idea that magic versus magic isn't about brute strength, although it is heavily tilted that way, and it is about finesse and technique and strategy, and underestimating your opponent is normally a bad thing. So that's kind of the theme that I got from this chapter. I think that goes on to 292 as well. Now, let's kind of cover the chapter in the segments that we've got and kind of pry out the key pieces of information. The first bit is an interaction between Nacht or Surnacht and Asta. So there's a few things we can glean from this interaction. Number one, Asta reminds him of his younger self. This is always a good thing, because ultimately this means that moving forward there'll be a favourable relationship if he's thinking back fondly when being around this person. The second thing is, in that memory he also thought of Yami, because it was him and Yami together. So there's essentially, whether through indifference or him just faking it, this ultimately shows that he has a positive relationship with Yami, whether he chooses to admit it or not. The next piece of thing that's important in this segment is when Asa basically confirms essentially the limit of his ability. So he's got 5 minutes with his form, but the reaction to this is the fact that he can't do anything for 30 minutes now. So he'll be able to use his swords, he just won't be able to go into devil mode, dark mode, union mode, anything like that. Which is good, because what this ultimately does, it gives you an end goal. So this much puts a strain on his body. It means he needs to get stronger. It means there's a chance for a time skip. It also means that there's a chance for him to have a long way to go in the story before he's like end of series level capability. But it shows the potency of his power, because basically level 1 highest level, floor 1 highest level demons have been defeated within 5 minutes, 2 of them by one person, with a little bit of help. So that's the second thing to bear in mind. The third thing which I liked was, ultimately we are reminded in diagrammatic form, an internal monologue that's basically happening, I believe, with Nat, and he basically reminds the reader, for the audience, for the author, where is everybody. So you get a diagram, you get what Fuego Leon is up to, you get in that diagram, in the similar area, what Cis Leon or Mela Leon is up to, and then you get the Dark Triads. Morris is with Yami and William, and then we need to take them down and deal with Morris, is kind of the conversation we have here. This kind of then allows a transition into where one of the things is going on, which in this case is Dante, because that's where this fight originally takes place, dealing with Dante, because Nacht was with Jack the Ripper, and we go back to seeing what's going on with Jack the Ripper, and ultimately Jack the Ripper is getting his behind waxed, clapped, and sent on his way. He hasn't lost his determination, which ultimately tells you the kind of a grit you need to be a captain, and probably some of the craziness as well. And ultimately, it's a downhill battle. He looks to be losing, and then this fight gets interrupted by none other than Zora and Magna Swing. Now, ultimately, we know that they don't have high levels of mana. They're not captain level mana, overwhelming pressure. But what they've got is the grit and determination to do something about it. And then we see the whole, I'm higher than you, you're lower than me, you have no mana, you must not be worth fighting. And this ultimately is shown when the first thing that happens, which is an attack thrown by Magna, which Dante doesn't do anything with because he's underestimating him, and the spell activates. Now, what I liked about this spell is not too long ago, probably I'm guessing in the last 6 months, I can't remember the exact date, there was a show for pro wrestling where they had something called a dog and collar match. It's a historical kind of legendary type of fight where you're attached to a collar and you beat the living, out of each other. And I don't know if the author is an old school wrestling fan, but it does look like he's kind of building towards that. What I also found funny was in this transformation that shows this chain jail type of thing, Magna's basically got knuckle dusters in his flame technique, and the battle starts. What I found interesting was the link isn't to just the demon magic that Dante possesses. There's a link to him, so he can't escape. This fight has to happen, and they're basically equals. And that's pretty much the chapter, because that's kind of more or less how it ends. And then 292 kind of goes over a few things and adds some disposition and explains a little bit further. So let's get into chapter 292. So, chapter 292. This pretty much carries on what I was discussing in 291 now. I purposely withheld some information in the previous chapter because I wanted to cover it in this section, and I felt it was quite apt. So when the connection happens, the chain deathmatch begins. Some of the mana is given to Magna, and Magna's like, oh, this much power. Ultimately, it shows you the level difference between them two, and we get further explanation and disposition to what's been going on. We have a number of flashbacks that are in 291, and obviously they've been waiting to do their thing. We're told specifically that this technique is incomplete. Again, this is really key, because what this ultimately means is down the line this will get improved, and it could be a weapon that can be made more powerful over time. So I like the fact that it's incomplete, and it might be a thing where he has multiple spells of a similar fashion like this to help him get over stronger opponents. So let's talk about 292 now. So the chapter is split essentially into two segments. Number one is like the flashback about them training together for 6 months. So this is based on 6 months training, and then second part is the fight, or what's going on with the fight. So let's cover the 6 months. 6 months is interesting because it shows you a lot of inner feelings for Magna Swing, because ultimately he is driven by the ability that he has to be less of a burden or more of a help to the Black Bulls, and he always rivals himself or keeps himself going with how Luke is developing. The difference though is Luke essentially is talented. Now that's not to say Magna isn't talented, he's just talented in a different way. So, if you think back to when they fought together before, we always assumed, or it was made apparent, that Luke Volti is technically closer to a genius than Magna is, and he's stronger. And then when they fought together against Mr. Third Eye Beastman himself in the underwater temple, they both got clapped and they both needed to get stronger. Then they both went off and wanted to find a cure for Asta's arms, and they came back stronger, and there was like this whole joke thing. And then we saw in the Royal Selection arc that he did really well. Magna did okay, but Luke did really well. He was essentially at that point kind of like vice captain level. The levels and posts have changed since then, so everyone's got stronger, but what was generally expected, the lowest level of vice captain at that time, he's basically that. So him chasing that is kind of really difficult and challenging, and he doesn't want to be left behind, so he wants to find ways where he can get better. And Zora's in the same boat because he wants to get stronger too, and hopefully working together he can. This is good because now more than just Asta, he's actually working with other members of the Black Bulls, where he kind of was lazy and kind of kept himself away even though he was a member. So I like their interaction. So together they come up with this plan, and it's confirmed that basically half of the opponent's power is given to him. They're equal. So it's a battle of will and endurance really, and then that's essentially the fighting starts. There's gravity being used and that sort of thing. But what I found pretty sweet was this. I mean, the quality of some of the drawings aren't as good, which explains the break. But there's a panel right at the end where it looks like, again, we're having internal dialogue. I can't tell. And you get Zora saying that, look, if they're immortal, if they're humans, if they're possessed by demons, Magna, you need to win. Magna! And there's a point where there's a punch that connects to Dante's face, and if you imagine this is the nose, we'll do it this way. That's the nose. There, and there's a punch that just crushes the nose, and then you see that he's knocked Dante down, and it's like, sometimes you don't really get to see it like that. So the fact that they've done it, and because it's kind of a brute type of fist fight, I really like, because it's kind of he's taken this high level person off his perch and he's dragged him down to the depths of hell where these low class mages and wizards fight, and he's made it a fist fight. He's not made it you pull out your nukes, I'll pull out my guns, and he's made it a fist fight, and he's doing well. The only issue with this is, although the mana's the same, the recoverability rate of Dante is still significantly higher. So this is going to be a drawn-out battle, which is probably what we need right now. Although it's counterintuitive because it gives Morris more time to open more gates, what this also does is give Asta more time to recover. So that being said, hopefully, if it goes the way I'm thinking it's going, which it might not, what this possibly could mean is, if Mori doesn't open the door in time and Dante gets taken out after 30 minutes, we might be able to see a union mode again and see how it compares to level 2. Ultimately, I think all the doors are going to open. It's just going to be a case of, okay, we need to defeat all the Dark Triad, and it's going to get proven that Xenon possibly, or Vanica is probably the stronger one. Because Dante's been defeated now, he's got stronger, but it just seems to me that that's possibly the case. That being the case, and that is the end of my review. So thank you for all those that have got this far. I will see you next time. Peace.